Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you did something purely because you wanted to, not because someone expected it of you? If you're sitting there struggling to remember, you're not alone. Here's the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. We spend the first 70 years of our lives collecting things, collecting people, collecting obligations, and collecting expectations. And then one day we wake up and realize we're buried under the weight of it all. I'm going to share something with you today that might challenge everything you've been told about aging gracefully. Society loves to talk about retirement planning, about downsizing, about staying active, but nobody talks about the deeper liberation that comes after 70. Nobody talks about the profound freedom that comes from finally understanding what actually matters and having the courage to release everything else. This isn't going to be one of those feel-good videos that tells you aging is all sunshine and wisdom. This is about the uncomfortable, honest conversations we need to have about the second half of our 70s and beyond. The things that stop making sense, the burdens we've been carrying that we never needed to carry in the first place, and most importantly, the radical permission you now have to live entirely on your own terms. So, if you're ready to have an honest conversation about what really happens when you stop playing by everyone else's rules and start writing your own, stay with me, because what I'm about to share might just change how you spend every single day you have left.
Here's something I want you to consider. Think about the last family gathering you attended. How many times did you bite your tongue? How many times did you nod along with someone's opinion, even though you completely disagreed? How many times did you present a version of yourself that you thought others wanted to see rather than who you actually are? We've spent 7 decades perfecting the art of shape-shifting, becoming the dutiful child for our parents, even when we disagreed with their choices, becoming the reliable friend who shows up to every event, even when we'd rather be home, becoming the successful professional who meets everyone's expectations, even when those expectations felt hollow. And here's the devastating part. We did it so well that we forgot who we actually were underneath all those masks. The weight of other people's opinions isn't just heavy, it's insidious. It creeps into every decision we make. It whispers in our ear when we're choosing what to wear, what to say, how to spend our time. It makes us second-guess our instincts and override our own desires in favor of what we think others want from us. But I want to tell you something radical. After 70, you've earned something precious. Perspective. You've lived long enough to see that the people whose opinions you worried about most, many of them weren't even paying that much attention to you in the first place. They were too busy worrying about what you thought of them. We've all been trapped in this ridiculous cycle of mutual performance, each of us exhausting ourselves, trying to impress people who were doing the exact same thing. Think about this for a moment. How many decisions have you made in your life based on fear of judgment? How many dreams did you set aside because they didn't fit someone else's definition of appropriate or sensible? How many times did you silence your own voice because you were afraid of what speaking up might cost you? And here's the question that matters most. What would your life look like right now if you had made every decision based solely on what felt right to you rather than what others expected? I'm not asking this to create regret. I'm asking because right now, in this moment, you still have time. You still have the power to make different choices. The beautiful, liberating truth about reaching this stage of life is that you finally have the clarity to see through the illusion. You understand now that approval is like chasing the horizon. No matter how far you run toward it, it always stays just out of reach, because there will always be someone with an opinion. There will always be someone who thinks you should be doing something different, living some other way, making different choices. So what if you just stopped running? What if you planted your feet exactly where you are and said, "This is enough. I am enough, and I'm done performing for an audience that doesn't even matter."
Let's talk about all the things you own. Or more accurately, let's talk about all the things that own you. Walk through your home right now in your mind. How many rooms do you have that are filled with things you haven't touched in years? How many closets are packed with clothes that no longer fit your body or your lifestyle? How many drawers are stuffed with gadgets you bought thinking they'd make your life easier, but instead they just took up space? Here's what nobody tells you when you're young and accumulating possessions. They don't tell you that every single object you bring into your life requires something from you. It requires space. It requires maintenance. It requires mental energy to remember where it is and what you intended to do with it. We think we're collecting things, but really, we're creating an ever-expanding list of obligations to inanimate objects. I want you to think about the happiest moment you've experienced in the past year. Really think about it. Was it tied to something you owned? Or was it a conversation, a moment of peace, a connection with someone you love, a beautiful sunset, a memory that surfaced unexpectedly? The truth is, our most meaningful experiences rarely have anything to do with the things we've spent our lives accumulating. But we hold on anyway. We hold on to our mother's china that we never use because letting it go feels like betraying her memory. We hold on to furniture that no longer fits our space because we spent good money on it 30 years ago. We hold on to clothes we haven't worn in a decade because they represent a version of ourselves we're not ready to admit is gone. Every object becomes weighted with meaning, with guilt, with obligation. And here's what that weight does to us. It keeps us tethered to the past. It prevents us from moving freely into the present. It fills our homes and our minds with clutter that makes it harder to see what actually matters right now, in this moment, at this stage of our lives. There's a particular kind of freedom that comes from letting go. Not just the physical space it creates, though that matters too, but the psychological space, the emotional liberation of realizing that you don't need to carry all of this forward. You can honor your past without being imprisoned by it. You can remember your loved ones without trying to preserve every artifact from that version of your life. Think about this. What if your living space reflected who you are right now rather than who you used to be? What if you walked into your home and everything in it was something you actually used, actually loved, actually needed? How much lighter would you feel? The myth we've been sold is that possessions equal security, that a full house means a full life, that holding on to things somehow protects us from loss or change. But the opposite is true. The more we accumulate, the more vulnerable we become. Vulnerable to the work of maintaining it all, vulnerable to the anxiety of protecting it, vulnerable to the grief of eventually having to let it go anyway, whether through downsizing or death. What's one thing in your home right now that you could let go of today? Not eventually, not someday, today. Start small. Start with something that's easy, and notice how it feels. Notice the breath of fresh air that comes with creating even the smallest amount of space. I want to talk about your calendar. How many things are on it right now that you genuinely want to do versus things you feel you should do? How many commitments are you maintaining out of habit, out of guilt, out of a sense of obligation that you're not even sure where it came from? We've been trained from childhood to be accommodating, to say yes, to show up, to be reliable. And these aren't bad qualities. But somewhere along the way, we stopped asking ourselves a crucial question. Do I actually want to do this? We replaced our own desires with a sense of duty. We learned to override our instincts in favor of meeting everyone else's expectations.
Think about the last time someone invited you to something and your immediate internal response was dread. But you said yes anyway. You said yes because you didn't want to hurt their feelings. You said yes because you've always gone. You said yes because you were afraid of what they might think if you said no. And then you spent the entire time wishing you were anywhere else, using energy you don't have to give, performing enthusiasm you don't feel. This is what I call the tyranny of politeness, and it's exhausting, it's soul-draining, and after 70, it's completely unnecessary. Here's a radical idea. What if you only said yes to invitations that genuinely excited you? What if you evaluated every social obligation based on whether it added value to your life rather than whether declining it might disappoint someone? What if you protected your time and energy as fiercely as you once protected your children? I can already hear some of you thinking, but that's selfish. And to that I say, no, it's not. Selfishness is demanding that others sacrifice their well-being for your benefit. Setting boundaries about how you spend your own time is not selfishness, it's self-respect. It's acknowledging that your time is finite and precious, and you have every right to be intentional about how you use it. Think about the people in your life who you genuinely enjoy spending time with, the ones who energize you rather than deplete you, the conversations that leave you feeling enriched rather than exhausted. Don't those relationships deserve more of your time and attention than the obligatory gatherings that drain you? When you say no to what doesn't serve you, you're saying yes to what does. You're creating space for the connections that matter. You're preserving your energy for the experiences that bring you joy. You're living intentionally rather than reactively. And here's something important. The people who truly care about you will understand. They won't be offended by your honesty. They won't hold it against you if you decline an invitation because you need to rest, or because you'd rather spend your evening differently, or simply because you don't want to go. The people who react with hurt or anger when you set a boundary, they're telling you something valuable about the nature of your relationship. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It doesn't mean cutting yourself off from social connection. Human connection is vital, especially as we age. But the key word is connection, real connection, not performance, not obligation, not going through the motions while counting down the minutes until you can leave. What if every social interaction you had was one you chose because you wanted to be there? What if you spent your time only with people who appreciated your presence rather than expected it? How would that change the quality of your relationships? How would that change the quality of your days?
Let's talk about something we don't discuss enough. The war we've been waging against our own bodies. The battle against aging that we've been fighting since the first gray hair appeared, since the first wrinkle formed, since our bodies started showing evidence of the 7 decades we've lived. We live in a culture that treats aging as something to be feared, hidden, and fought against at all costs. The beauty industry has built an empire on our insecurity, selling us creams and procedures and promises that we can somehow cheat time if we just buy the right products. The message is clear and relentless. Youth is beautiful, aging is something to be ashamed of, and your value diminishes with every passing year. But I want to ask you something. When you look at someone you love, someone you've known for years, do you see their wrinkles? Do you count their gray hairs? Do you judge them by the standards that beauty magazines promote? Of course not. You see their smile. You see their kindness. You see the light in their eyes when they laugh. You see the accumulation of experiences that have shaped them into who they are. So why are we holding ourselves to a standard we don't apply to anyone else we care about? Every line on your face tells a story. The laugh lines around your eyes,
Those came from decades of joy, of laughter with friends, of smiling at your children and grandchildren. The furrows in your brow, those came from years of concentration, of worry for people you love, of thinking deeply about things that matter. The sunspots on your hands, those came from a lifetime of doing things, creating things, caring for people and places and projects. Your body is not something to be ashamed of. It's a map of your life. It's evidence that you've lived, truly lived, for 70 years or more. Every scar has a story. Every change represents an experience. You are not deteriorating. You are accumulating evidence of a life fully lived. Think about the energy you've spent over the years trying to fight the natural process of aging, the money spent on products that promise to turn back time, the mental space devoted to worrying about how you look, the anxiety about whether others find you attractive or acceptable. What could you have done with all that energy if it hadn't been consumed by an unwinnable war against time? Here's the revolutionary act: accepting yourself exactly as you are right now, not trying to recapture who you were at 30 or 40 or 50, not measuring yourself against impossible standards created by an industry that profits from your insecurity. Just being present in the body you have, in the life you're living, in this exact moment. And here's what happens when you stop fighting yourself. You become magnetic. There's something deeply attractive about someone who is completely comfortable in their own skin, someone who radiates confidence, not because they've achieved some impossible standard of perfection, but because they've made peace with who they are. That kind of authentic presence draws people in far more than any amount of anti-aging cream ever could. The truth is, the people worth keeping in your life don't care about your wrinkles. They care about your character, your humor, your wisdom, your presence. And the people who do judge you based on your appearance, they're revealing their own shallow values, not your worth. What would it feel like to spend even one day not thinking about how you look, not checking the mirror with critical eyes, not worrying about what others think of your appearance, not apologizing for taking up space in a body that doesn't meet society's narrow definition of acceptable? Just existing as yourself, focusing on what you're doing and who you're with and how you're feeling. There's a conversation we need to have about the people in your life. Not the people you love and who love you back, but the other ones. The ones who leave you feeling exhausted. The ones who take more than they give. The ones who've been in your life for so long that you've never questioned whether they should still be there. We talk about toxic relationships like they're always obvious, like they're always dramatic, abusive, or overtly harmful. But most toxic relationships are far more subtle than that. They're the friend who only calls when they need something, the family member who always has a criticism ready but never a compliment, the person who drains your energy every time you interact but never seems to notice or care about the impact they have on you. And here's the thing we don't talk about enough. Longevity doesn't equal value. Just because you've known someone for 50 years doesn't mean they deserve a place in your life today. Just because they're family doesn't mean you owe them unlimited access to your time and energy. Just because ending the relationship would be uncomfortable doesn't mean maintaining it is the right choice. Think about the people in your life who make you feel small, who diminish your accomplishments, who always find something to criticize, who never ask about your life but expect you to listen endlessly to theirs, who make you feel worse about yourself after every interaction. Why are they still there? Often, it's because we've confused loyalty with martyrdom. We think being a good person means enduring relationships that hurt us. We think cutting someone out is cruel, even when keeping them in is slowly destroying our peace of mind. We've been taught that family is everything, that old friendships are sacred, that giving up on a relationship is a failure. But here's what I've learned. Protecting your peace is not cruelty. Setting boundaries is not selfishness. Walking away from someone who consistently treats you poorly is not giving up, it's choosing yourself. And after 70 years of putting others first, that's not just acceptable, it's necessary. You don't have unlimited energy anymore. You don't have decades stretching ahead of you to waste on relationships that deplete rather than fulfill you. Every hour you spend with someone who makes you feel bad is an hour you're not spending with someone who makes you feel good. Every conversation that leaves you drained is a conversation you could have had with someone who energizes you. This doesn't mean you have to make dramatic announcements or burn bridges. Sometimes walking away looks like gradual distance, fewer phone calls, declined invitations, shorter visits. Sometimes it means a direct conversation about what needs to change, and sometimes, yes, it means a clear ending. The method matters less than the result, protecting your well-being by removing people who consistently harm it. And here's what often happens when you create space by letting go of toxic relationships. Better ones rush in to fill it. When you're not exhausted from managing difficult people, you have energy for nurturing healthy connections. When you're not walking on eggshells around someone who's always critical, you can be fully yourself with people who appreciate you. When you stop accepting poor treatment, you raise your standards for how you deserve to be treated. Your relationships should add to your life, not subtract from it. They should leave you feeling better, not worse. They should be reciprocal, with both people giving and receiving. If that's not happening, you're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose yourself.
We've covered a lot of ground today, and I want to bring it all together with one final thought. Everything we've discussed, letting go of others' opinions, releasing material possessions, declining obligations, embracing your authentic appearance, walking away from toxic relationships, it all comes down to the same fundamental shift. It's about finally understanding that you get to decide what matters. You've spent 70 years learning what the world expects from you. You've internalized society's rules, family traditions, cultural expectations, and personal obligations. You've built a life around should and supposed to and expected to. And some of that was necessary, some of it served you well. But now you have the wisdom to distinguish between what actually matters and what you've been carrying simply because you always have. Now you have the clarity to see which parts of your life bring you joy and which parts are just taking up space. Now you have the courage to make different choices. This isn't about rejecting your past or pretending those 70 years didn't shape you. Everything you've experienced, every person you've loved, every challenge you've overcome, it's all part of who you are. But honoring your past doesn't mean being imprisoned by it. You can acknowledge where you've been while choosing where you go from here. What I want you to understand is this. It's not too late. It's not too late to lighten your load. It's not too late to say no to what drains you and yes to what fulfills you. It's not too late to live according to your own values rather than someone else's expectations. Every single day you wake up is another opportunity to choose differently. So I'm inviting you to ask yourself these questions. What am I carrying that I don't need to carry anymore? What am I doing out of obligation rather than desire? Who am I trying to please besides myself? What would my life look like if I made every decision based solely on what brings me peace and joy? The answers might surprise you. They might challenge you. They might require difficult conversations or uncomfortable changes. But I promise you this, the freedom on the other side of those changes is worth every bit of discomfort it takes to get there. You've earned the right to live lightly. You've earned the right to prioritize your own well-being. You've earned the right to spend your remaining years exactly as you choose, not as anyone else thinks you should, not according to some script you wrote decades ago that no longer fits, but as you want to, right now, based on who you are today.
That's the uncomfortable truth nobody tells you about turning 70. You're finally free. The question is, what are you going to do with that freedom?